This is relaxing. I wonder what Lewis is playing. Hey, Lewis, what you playing?
Rise, my pals! Raise the walls! Build me an empire!
You guys ready? Lobby up.
Hey guys, lobby up.
GG's, lobby up.
Dude, we gotta lobby up.
Lobby up.
Hey, should we lobby up?
Yo, lobby up.
Lobby up, y'all.
Hey, let's grab a beer. Lobby up. Welcome, everybody, to Lobby Up. You got Lewis and Matt in the house.
What's up?
Today is a very, very special episode. One, it's our second iteration of Whatcha, Playin, our format where we talk about the games we love and we play. And this happens to be the final episode of Season 1. Cue the fanfare. Woo! So we're so excited. We've come such a long way from episode 1. We feel that we've grown as podcasters and kind of figured out our way in the land of gaming podcasts, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been such a fun experience. This has been like a dream just to be able to kind of talk to people about the games that we love to play and the games that drive you guys. So getting better at that has just been a really fun experience, and we've enjoyed every minute of it.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. But let's not get too sappy. That's not what people are here for. People are here to hear our thoughts on what we're playing.
That's right.
So yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid, my man. I drank the Kool-Aid. I fell into the hype, but I fell in with grace. I fell into the hype of Palworld, and I have put about 40 hours into Palworld, and let me tell you, I regret nothing, and I will put more hours to come, dude. I have enjoyed my time so far with Palworld.
Nice. First impressions off the bat, like, what are some of your favorite things you're loving?
God, I love how Pokemon it is without being too Pokemon. Like, honestly speaking, that's the best part, and I want to say that's part of its success. Ultimately, from the beginning, it was Pokemon with guns, and honestly, I would say that's almost misleading to me. I was expecting full-blown guns blazing from the beginning, but it is a survival game first and foremost, and it is Pokemon Legends Arceus second, in my opinion. It really hooked me from the beginning in terms of the world and how beautiful it is, and for an early access game that still has plenty of life left in it, plenty of development time that's still going to go into it. We haven't even hit that 1.0 version of it yet. It really sunk its nails into me, man, and it's something special, honestly. And that sounds a little generic, but there really is something special here.
It's like almost because it's becoming its own separate entity by taking all these different influences, it really does take a form of its own, right?
For sure. And again, everyone is like, oh, it's Pokemon, it's Pokemon. I'm like, yes, it is. But it is that it reminds me more of, have you heard of Rust? It reminds me of Ark. It reminds me more of, again, a survival game. Our friend and friend of the channel, Murph, he actually was with me when I first started playing this game. We saw it on Game Pass. We're like, oh, like, let's see what the hype is about. And we played together. He saw it more, obviously without the aesthetics, he saw it more of a Minecraft. Like that's what
kind of the vibe I get when I've seen gameplay for it. It's been very much more like your resource collecting in the beginning, because you said it's very survival based. So that's kind of the vibe I got, was like Minecraft.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the amount of freaking resource collecting that you have to do is kind of insane. I've seen some people build some monuments, just like the fourth wonder of the gaming world in these Palworld servers. It's kind of insane.
It really is. So you said that originally people called it a Pokemon with guns, and you were like, not so much. Like, how long did it take you to get to the guns?
Well, and that's why I said not so much, because again, I kind of figured that within the first couple hours you'd have a gun and you'd be shooting things and it'd be crazy, especially with the original. You remember the original trailers that came out for Palworld like 2 years ago? It had you on top of that Electabuzz looking Pokemon, and you were like on turrets shooting miniguns. It is nothing like that for the first 20 hours, I would say.
Wow. Dang,
Yeah.
That's a long time.
So like I think it was hour 20 when I first unlocked a gun, and again, it's not a good gun. The first gun you make in the game, I think it's level 22, and it's a musket.
Oh wow.
So I felt like a Civil War general half the time.
So nothing close to that like machine guns blazing type of style that they advertise, at least for the first while.
For a good while. And even then, I'm pushing level 30 something now, and I just got the ability to make a handgun, and I feel like I'm still missing the rocket launchers and the miniguns. But the cool thing about the game is what you don't have in guns, your pals can do for you. So I have this pal called Lift Monk. Lift Monk is basically knockoff Pachirisu. And her special ability is that she gets on your shoulder and she has her own minigun. So
okay.
So you get a special, she gets on your shoulder, you start shooting like a freaking Tommy gun, and that kind of replaced the need for a gun for a while. The only problem is that it's on a cooldown system, so you use it for like 10 seconds in a pinch, and then you're without a gun. So
Dang.
like your Pokemon, sorry, I'm gonna do that a lot today. I am gonna do that so much today. Your pal really does supplement the gun for a hot minute of this game.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, I mean, if there's like other ways to kind of have that experience in the meantime until you build up to it, and I guess if you got like rocket launchers and miniguns in the early game, that would kind of shorten the lifespan of the game that you're playing. So it's good that that you have something to work up to.
Well, which is true. I mean, in retrospect, if I would have had a minigun in the beginning of this game, like I would have stopped playing a long time ago.
Right.
There's only so much fun you can have shooting these innocent, beautiful creatures for fun and no reason. But let me tell you, those guns are super important, man. Like, so one of the cool things that this game has, they're called boss pals, or people call it whatever they want. But instead of like the legendary Pokemon, you have bosses across the whole map.
Okay.
And they're giant-sized regular pals. So it's literally right next to my base. It looks like a giant elephant. I do not remember his name. You can see it. But it's a giant grass elephant. It's level 38, and it's sitting right next to my base. And I built my base at level 2. So like that's been like my white whale and he doesn't bother me. Like we're amicable. He sees me building. I see him eating grass. I admire his beauty, but I'm also planning his death and his capture and his enslavement at any given time. So like I'm waiting for that day to come. I'm still not powerful enough to take it down. But what I'm getting at is instead of these legendary Pokemon, you have them scattered all over the place, and you kind of build up to these higher level boss pals. I believe I got a Meowth looking pal. It was a level 5 boss. I caught it. It's bigger than the regular ones, and it was fun. But seeing yourself progress and get these stronger and stronger boss pals, and then using them to build your base, it's actually kind of comical. I have what was like the guardian of the forest. It looks like and again, guys, I don't remember these pals' names. I don't really care to. I literally call them by their Pokemon names. So I'm just like, oh yeah, that's Bayleaf. But I have a Meganium Bayleaf inspired Pokemon. It's beautiful. It's giant. Pal. And it's supposed to be like the guardian of the forest, and it's now like harvesting all my crops.
It's like, that's great. It's very beautiful and majestic what you can do out there. Now be my farmer.
Well, like how I see it is like, imagine actually playing Pokemon, and it's like you catch Suicune, like the late this guardian of the forest, and it's like, now you're gonna build all of my Pokeballs for me. Thank you. Come again. Like, it is definitely a tension breaker for the genre, is what I keep telling people. Here's my thing about Palworld. It doesn't take itself too serious. And we needed that. I think we've needed that for a long time. I mean, I'm going to challenge you, like a thought here.
Sure.
When's the last time you played a Pokemon game and thought, like, it's nice to see them having fun with the source material. It's nice to see them not taking themselves too serious. And I'll give you a second. I'll give you a second to think about it.
Personally, I haven't played it, but I think that many people would agree that like the mystery dungeon games are probably filling that a little bit.
Yes, which I would agree with that. But now let me even narrow that even further. This game is more like Legends Arceus more than any other Pokemon game.
Right.
Now let's start thinking more mainline games, you know, a little bit more humor, a little bit more wackiness. Like,
Okay.
personally, I would even say Legends Arceus was the closest one. And even then, to me, it lacked the wackiness and the jokes and like, you should see these Palworld Pokedex entries or whatever. They're kind of insane. Like, everybody knows this one. There is a Salazzle knockoff,
Yeah.
and her name is Lavander. Everybody knows her.
Well, of course you know her.
I mean, listen, the internet knows her, but her Pokedex or Palworld Dex entry is kind of insane. This is the first time I've ever read anything in this medium, like Pokemon inspired and all. We're talking Digimon, Yokai Watch, all of these knockoffs to acknowledge that their monsters are sleeping with the humans. Like,
Oh my gosh.
this Palmon thing is literally like recorded to be mating with both pals and humans in this universe, and that to me is just a bonkers, man. I love that they pulled the trigger on that, because let's be real, there's some freaks out there letting their freak flags fly, you know.
I mean, it's just like you said, it's a nice break for the genre. I think that's a really good way to put it, because even if this doesn't wind up being like the answer, it was like the OG break from Pokemon having monopoly on this genre.
Yes, and we'll definitely get to that even more when I
Right.
start going on a crazy lunatic rant on Palworld versus Pokemon, because I do have a lot to say. But before I get there, I do want to talk about my time in this world of pals. I don't even know what to call it, because I do keep calling them Palmons. This game is actually beautiful. It's what I wish a Pokemon game could be. The world is interesting. The graphics look good. Is it buggy? Yes, but it's early access, and that's been my pass for this game. I understand that it's early access. There's still plenty of development left in this game, and even with that, there's honestly not too many crazy bugs that I've fallen victim to. Granted, there was one. There was actually a crazy, and this is a crazy story. I went into a dungeon, because they have dungeons, and that's cool. And I must say the dungeons are nothing special. They're pretty generic caves that you go into and explore and like get some resources, catch some Pokemon, and call it a day. I found some really valuable resources. I got some rubies, I got some sapphires, I caught a whole bunch of pals. I was like stacked in terms of inventory. I had like a couple hundred pal balls, if you will, and I did everything right. I beat this dungeon, I catch the boss, and I'm like walking out with air in my chest, like, yeah, baby, like I just took this dungeon down like a freaking mad lad. I get into the teleportation place to like get me out of the dungeon and back to the overworld so I can like go put my spoils away in my camp, and it teleports me under the map.
What?
Yeah, I am under the map, and I can't see anything. It's black. Everything's black. It reminded me of the Miles Morales glitch that I saw in Spider-Man 2, where it's like, I'm in a box, and it's black, and I don't know where I'm at. I'm scared, mostly for my inventory, and I'm just like, this is really stupid. And there's not much you can do, bro. There is an option to respawn, but it's the same thing as dying, so I would drop all of my loot under the map.
There's no autosave to where you could like go back.
So it does save, but it wouldn't take, since it's technically more of like a server. It's a server versus a game file. Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah.
So it's like you can invite people to this server. You can play multiplayer. So like, unlike a save file where you can just go to the earliest point in that file, here you're in a server. So your stuff just falls where it is, and you have to go pick it up after you die.
Damn.
But since I'm under the map, if I die, I can't go back under this map.
Right. Like the fact that you're there at all is just insane.
So I'm freaking out, and I pull out my torch, and the torch does nothing. Like, it's supposed to light the area around you. Instead, my entire TV turns into the animation of the torch. So like, I don't see anything. So I'm just like, what am I gonna do? I have so much good loot now. Like right now, what the heck am I supposed to do? So I sat there for like a minute looking at my TV. Either one, I respawn, lose all my items, and hope that it spawns to the top of the map, or I respawn and lose all my stuff. So I respawned, dropped all of my items, and we're talking good loot.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get my items. They were under the map. So I was circling around trying to figure out how to get under the map, trying to glitch through, and I'm like, this is BS. I want my items back. So I went through the whole dungeon again, got into the teleportation system, and it teleported me under the map again. And I'm just like, what is going on? But the best part now is that under map area was now big. I could see my character, I could see my items. It basically turned into a world under the world, if that makes any sense. So like I'm on land, I get my items, and I look up and I see the mountain ranges, I see the forest, I see the lakes, and I'm like, okay, I can figure this out. So I pick up my items, I get on my Pidgeot inspired bird named Nightwing, and I start trying to fly to the top of the map. And I get right to like the point where I could probably clip through, but then my pal's stamina runs out, so it just drops to the floor. So I'm like, oh, like I can do this. So I'm like, screw this, and I just start flying into the abyss. Like, let it be known, all you see is like blackness around me and a floor, and I just keep flying straight, and then eventually, bro, I just fall into infinity. I just fall, and I keep falling, and I fell for 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And I was about to get to the point where I was just gonna like, I didn't even know I was gonna delete the game. I was gonna respawn, but like my character model just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and I'm like, and it eventually disappeared. And I'm like, well, like there goes that. Like I'm screwed. And then out of the grace of God, the game reset. Like it almost soft crashed. The loading screen came up, and then it just spawned me with all my items back to my camp.
Yo, yes. You just had to crash the game. That's all you had to do.
Basically just had to crash the game to get all my stuff.
Dude, that's amazing.
I'm not even going to tell you all of my valuables in there, because like I'm sure high level people would be like, you went through all that for garbage. But it's like that was valuable to me
at the time. I'm sure it was very
dude.
Valuable.
So it was well worth it. But let it be known, that was quite literally the only crazy glitch that I've had in this game, other than a couple T-poses when you first like boot up the game. But I think that's funny and charming, and ultimately that was less glitches that I dealt with than Spider-Man 2.
Had to throw that in there.
Oh yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about something. Basically, in Pokemon, the way that the breeding system works is you kind of drop off two Pokemon at a daycare, and they spend time together, and then an egg forms. And then basically the people that play for breeding in Pokemon, they really do that for trying to train certain stats and get better move sets on Pokemon. What is breeding like in Palworld? I've seen a couple things that it says that like you can create whole new pals and stuff. So like what's been your experience with it?
So I'll be honest, and this goes for Palworld as well as Pokemon. I'm actually not that huge of a breeder in terms of like hatching eggs. Like the most I'll do it for in Pokemon is to get your Munchlax, to get your Hapinis, to get your baby Pokemon. I also did the Masuda method of hatching eggs.
You tried to get a shiny Wooloo, didn't you?
And I still have not gotten that baby. I want my shiny Wooloo, which, let there be known, quick little sidebar, there is a Wooloo inspired pal, and it's probably one of my favorite pals in the whole game. They're so adorable and they're so useless. But anyways, so yeah, like admittedly I'm not much of a breeder, but I do know that there is plenty of people out there that are like breeding some crazy things. There's like, for instance, there's this guy I saw on Reddit. There's a Latios pal, and it's super fast. It gets you everywhere. He breeded all of the movement staff, so it's like Swift and Fast Flyer and all this crazy thing. He gets on this Latios Palmon, whatever, and just like goes at the speed of sound across the entire map. it is just like insane. And he reaches from one side of the map to the other in like 2 seconds. And I'm exaggerating. It's maybe like 10 seconds because it's such a
But
big.
still, to get across the entire map that quick.
It's insane. And he did it all through breeding. And with the breeding, it took him 12 hours to hatch the perfect pal to get all of those stats. And technically, he could have gotten a 5th stat to improve his movements. So it's kind of crazy. But in Palworld, let's say you get a penguin pal and you breed it with a, I don't know, a bird pal, you will get a completely different existing pal. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
So let's put it in Pokemon terms. You get a Pikachu, you breed it with Bulbasaur, and then you get a Charizard. Like it's
wow.
So
Okay.
Yeah. It does its thing. It's fun. It's something that I've just never gotten into, but it's definitely has its niche. What I do like to do is shiny hunt, and in Palworlds, instead of shinies, you get these lucky pals. They have this like golden glow to them. They're bigger and they're way more powerful, up to like 20% more powerful than your standard one.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I had one encounter with a lucky pal, and it was a dire wolf, so it's like your Lycanroc inspired pal. And it demolished me. I was so underleveled. It was so powerful. It basically hyper beamed my whole party into oblivion, including me. And I kept throwing every pal ball I had at it, and I could not catch this lucky. And it's probably my biggest regret so far that I've had in this game. But listen, overall, this game is beautiful. It's fun. I'm gonna use a nice little 2012 word here. It's quirky. It's definitely something that I would recommend any sort of Pokemon lover play, or any survival game player play. But to round off my time with Palworld, I really got to talk about Pokemon versus Palworld. And that's honestly this has been my biggest debated topic with the internet. Let it be known, guys, and this is whether you're pro Palworld or anti Palworld, Pokemon is not going anywhere. Palworld will not dethrone Pokemon.
Right.
I can't think of a single IP that possibly could. Pokemon is the #1 IP in the world in terms of profits.
Right.
If Marvel can't do it, if Harry Potter can't do it, if GTA can't do it, Palworld is not going to dethrone Pokemon in terms of sales, in terms of player base. But I hope Pokemon got a giant, swift kick in the ass, because Pokemon has been increasingly more frustrating to me over the years. And this is coming from somebody who's played since the beginning. You and I were part of the demographic that was in Pokemania. We were in the height of Pokemon's popularity. It was advertised to us. So I am a lover of all things Pokemon. But man, have the games really gone downhill, dude. That could very well be an unpopular opinion. What I just said could really piss somebody off. But listen and hear me out. Sword and Shield wasn't that bad. I liked Sword and Shield. It was a good foray into Pokemon on a console. Could it have been better? Yes. Then we had Pokemon Arceus,
which was great,
which I really loved. I think that could have gone somewhere. And then to myself, I kept thinking like, okay, if they expand on this and, put cities in here, put gyms in here, put quests in here, this could turn into something really special. Then we got Scarlet and Violet, and it really just jaded me to the franchise. I feel like Game Freak has gotten lazy. I feel that they've almost lost the passion that I used to see in these old games. And again, I'm not usually the doom and gloom guy, but they could have done so much better. You can't even get into a building in Scarlet and Violet. It's now a menu to get into these buildings that you could once just enter. And don't get me started on the glitches. Don't get me started on the animations for these Pokemon.
The environments.
The environments are bland. And this is a company that has literal billions of dollars that they could play with. the Pokemon company can invest more into these games, but instead they've rested on the fact that if you're a Pokemon lover, you're gonna buy it. And guess what? I bought the game. Guess what? I didn't finish it. It's the first Pokemon game that I've ever bought and owned that I didn't finish. Meanwhile, Palworld is out here with a indie development team with a couple, they had millions of dollars, but nowhere near the resources that Pokemon has.
Absolutely.
And created this fun, this engaging game with beautiful graphics, beautiful environments, and admittedly some ripped off Pokemon or Palmons, but you could see that there was some thought, there was some effort, and there was some love put into this game. And that's sadly just something that I haven't seen in Pokemon in a little bit. And I really hope that Game Freak, Nintendo, and the Pokemon Company can look at this ragtag team of developers that made this stupid game that millions are enjoying and think to themselves, hey, maybe we can do better. Like, maybe we can put some inspiration into this game once again and make Pokemon great again.
Jesus. Like you said, we've both been lifelong Pokemon fans. We both play Pokemon Go. I would argue we're both pretty hardcore Pokemon Go players. We've traveled across the country in order to play the game.
Traveled across the land, searching far and wide.
Searching far and wide. And so this is something that is very much a part of our life. So to see it take this new form in Legends Arceus and be like, oh, cool, Pokemon's finally joining the 2020 era and making it into an open world game, and then they try with Scarlet and Violet, and it's just so disappointing. I mean, Legends Arceus was so good. When my wife saw me playing it, she went out and bought a Switch and the game just to be able to play herself. And her and I poured dozens of hours into that game together. It was so fun to bond over. And then I got so excited because she's never played a mainline Pokemon game, and they announced Scarlet and Violet. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to get one version and my wife gets the other version. This is going to be so fun. And we played a little bit together and we had fun in the first few hours of the game. But after that, it was just this really steep, disappointing drop off. And the more you play, the more that you see that there's these environments that are just, they look like N64 games, and the interactions with other people are just so meaningless. And the only good thing about the Pokemon games of just like going out and catching Pokemon, I even feel like it took a drop off from Legends Arceus. It's not as fast paced. It's just it's a far cry from what it could have been. And like you said, hopefully with Palworld, they look at this and say, we have room for improvement.
Yes. Listen, I remember our Pokemon, because we do have a Pokemon group with a whole bunch of us in it. And when Scarlet and Violet was first being announced, we're like, oh yeah, we're going to all play together because it's now multiplayer. And we're going to do all these raids and
we're going to raid together. Yeah.
And the game was just so bad, we didn't even get that into fruition. Like, and it's sad.
It is sad. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I really hope that Pokemon takes off and maybe not include all the elements of Palworld. Like, I know you said like you've got slaves in this game, but I'll tell you, the game that I've been playing, I'm the slave.
So I'm just going to get right to it, my man.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the question that's been burning in my heart. How many hours have you put into RuneScape, man?
You're not ready.
Oh, God.
So I'll start it off this way and I'll give you the grand total. So when you're in RuneScape and you go to like the little like quest section, you can find like a profile breakdown. It'll tell you exactly how many hours you've been playing.
That's cruel.
Funny enough, you can toggle it off if you don't want to look at it.
Good. You know what? Less cruel.
It says that I have played 43 days and 13 hours, which is a grand total of 1,045 hours.
Jesus, man. You're definitely a pal to that game.
Yeah, I'm like the working conditions are bad.
Well, that's too damn bad. So is this the account you've been using since you were a kid, or do you think you have other accounts with those kind of numbers?
No, so you're bringing me to something I'm going to be talking about soon, but this is on old school RuneScape, and it gets confusing, but I'm going to break it down for you and make it simple later. But basically, I've been playing this version of this game since roughly like 2019, 2020-ish. So that amount of hours has been across years. So makes it a little bit better, right?
Yeah, kind of.
But basically, RuneScape, for those who don't know, is an MMO, which an MMO is a shortened version of MMORPG, which is a shortened version of massively multiplayer online role-playing game. And essentially, you create your own character and you go into this giant server of a world, and you can interact with NPCs, but you can also interact with other people, and they can be doing their own quests in this world while you're doing your own quest. And there's many other MMOs out there. This is just the one that I'm enslaved to. But essentially, old school RuneScape is a version of the game that was played back in 2007. So some people call it 2007-scape. Its official name is old school RuneScape, but there's another version of RuneScape that is called RuneScape 3.
Okay.
So how this timeline works is, in 2007, there was one RuneScape, and they came out with this big, huge combat update, and it was so complicated and ridiculous, it turned people away from it. So a lot of people quit, and eventually that version of the game kept getting developed, and they honed it to where it wasn't so ridiculous, and that is what is known as RuneScape 3 today. But there was a time when a bunch of people were playing this game. They were like, you know, it'd be really fun is if they just took those old servers and just like created an old version of the game that everybody got hooked on originally.
Yeah, that's what I was hooked on back in the day.
Yeah, they were like, even though it's 2024 and we can have things look photorealistic, we want it to look polygon shaped and old looking like back in the day.
Dude, nostalgia sells, man. They gotta get that. Brought a lot of people back, I'm sure.
Oh, it did. So the devs were like, we're just going to do this. And they created a 2007 version of the game, and it took off. So they created this whole list of dedicated servers for old school RuneScape, and it is completely community driven. So in the banks in RuneScape, there is like a little poll booth, and you can see the current poll for content to be added into the game. And the developers are like, hey, do you want to do this? And 75% of the of the people who vote on it, not the whole player base, because that would be ridiculous, but of the people who vote, 75% have to say yes in order for it to be added to the game. If 74% or less say yes, it doesn't get added.
That's awesome.
Yes, it can be. But the flip side of things, unfortunately, is that a lot of people are a little bit too close-minded and narrow-minded about how they feel this game should be and how it should stay true to this heart of 2007. And I have a perfect example.
That sounds like American politics.
Dude, it's... yeah, it is, but it's a bunch of neckbeards as politicians. So basically, here's a perfect example. In old school RuneScape, there are 23 skills that you can train. And in RuneScape 3, the like newer, continuing to develop version of the game, there's 29 skills, okay? And the reason for this is anytime a skill that was added to RuneScape 3 that they may want to propose putting into old school, they have to put it at the poll. And every time it has failed. Every single time.
Really?
So like in 2008, there was a skill called summoning. It was really cool. And fun fact, my wife used to be like just as into this game as I was, but she played back in the day, and she loved the skill of summoning because she loves animals in real life, and she got to have like a platypus pet in the game.
Nice.
And so this skill came out so close to when old school started. A lot of people were like, oh yeah, this will pass the polls, and it didn't.
What?
And then funny enough, last year they proposed a brand new skill that has never been in RuneScape ever called sailing. And it's where you can like go across the map on water and do all this cool stuff.
That sounds awesome.
It's yeah, but it passed. So like on one hand, I'm like, so you wouldn't like these people that didn't pass it in the polls, I'm like, you wouldn't vote for a skill that actually was in the game and was very close to the old school RuneScape, but you'll pass brand new content. It's so backwards to me. It's so funny how people like go back and forth on what they think should or shouldn't be in the game. It's so
Again, sounds like American politics.
But from the obvious differences of like old school versus RuneScape 3, you have like the graphical differences. It's true to that old like nostalgic feel, as opposed to like the newer version is trying to be closer to games like World of Warcraft.
Okay. And
the gameplay is way different. So where the combat is like that simple old school combat that you used to play, where you got a sword and you're attacking a goblin, you don't have like all these power-ups at the bottom where there's like 20 like loading screens and stuff. That's what the newer version is like. So I think it's honestly, in a way, it's easier for new people to get into the old game, which is funny. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, I've been playing it for hours upon hours.
And granted, I'm admittedly somebody that fell off of RuneScape a while back, but I know the addictiveness of RuneScape and just that instant gratification of like leveling up your different skills and getting yourself in a nice bit of trouble with some goblins. Like it really can suck you in for an ungodly amount of time. And that's that. I mostly never played the premium version. I always played the free version. So I can only imagine that premium version giving you that premium content. It will suck you in like even triple the time that you would play on a free version.
Oh yeah, like the free version of the map is like, I think it's something absurd, like 10 to 20% of like the actual map size. You unlock the actual game when you play as a member, which that's like a whole thing where nowadays if you like make enough in-game currency, you can pay for membership with that. But it's pretty difficult to maintain that. But it is an option. So there's new world aspects of like microtransactions just kind of like peppered in there because I think that's what a lot of developers have to do nowadays.
Fair enough. And so what are you working on right now in RuneScape? Like, is there something that has been keeping you busy?
Yes. So the thing about MMOs is my wife calls them a life suck because
whoa, we're gonna have to censor that, like
because you can play this game exactly the amount of time that you feel like dedicating to these games. There's no running out of content. There really isn't. And if you get to that point, I think I can already guess what you look like as a person if you run out of content in RuneScape. So let me put it this way, okay? And this is something that you and I have kind of talked about on the side that is coming to console, like traditional console games. Like now that we have these open world RPGs, we're getting to the point the processing power of these consoles is good enough to handle games that are massive in size. So it's starting to experience what I call the open world quest burden. And that's where, like, for example, just last year, we had this conversation about Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda. You're trying to just do the main story quests. You're like, I gotta get to Kakariko Village. I'm just walking to another area on the map. And then along the way, you see a kid stuck in a well, so you help him. And then you see a Korok, so you got to help the Korok guy get to the other Korok. And then you're like, oh, there's a tower. I can unlock the rest of the map. And then you go do that. And then like, oh, I can shoot up into the sky, and I can go do this other shrine. And then you do the shrine. And then you're like, oh, wait, there's like a little thing down here that I got to explore because that looks cool. Looks like a dragon. And, oh, there's actually a dragon in the sky. And then it's like 6 hours later, and you never made it to Kakariko Village, which is like a 5-minute walk from where you started. So
yes,
that phenomenon is something that has always been a part of these MMOs. The things that people are starting to experience in these open world games has always been something that you experience, and it's been part of the addictiveness. It's part of how you get just completely consumed by these games because they're taking your attention in a million directions, and sometimes that can turn people off. It can be overwhelming, but for the most part in these games, it just adds to the addictiveness. And for example, there's a different version of it that I experience in RuneScape where I just want to get one thing. I just want to get a set of armor. And I know that it's a good set of armor. It's going to be helpful for me. In particular, the armor that I was trying to get a month ago was the Void armor. And it's something that I never played the mini game to get it. I didn't know how it worked, right? So I thought that I just had to go to this game called Pest Control for a few hours. And I go there and I figure out that there's actually an elite version of this armor. So I'm like,
what does that even mean?
So basically, like, the armor, the appeal is that if you're battling a boss and you need to have multiple different attack styles, like I want to be a mage and a ranger, this armor is cool in the sense that all you have to do is change the helmet and it completely changes your attack style, and it has respectable defense boosts and attack boosts, and you don't have to bring a whole new set of armor with you to change attack styles. So that's the big appeal. But the elite version gives you way better buffs to both of those regards. So you get better attack boosts, you get better bonuses for your defense. So it's just a better version of the armor I was already going for, essentially.
That's actually pretty sick, though.
Yeah, so I'm playing and I'm grinding out Pest Control. It's this mini game where you're just like killing these little monsters that come out of portals, and you do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again for hours. And then you get the armor. But when I found out there was elite armor, I was like, okay, I got to go for that. But I didn't realize that it meant that I had to get through the hard tier of the Western Provinces Diary, which is an area of RuneScape. Western Provinces is a whole section of the map. The diary entries are basically like a achievement list. Okay. So you can kind of already get why this is like kind of intimidating.
I'm getting secondhand intimidation. I'm just like, that sounds like a tall freaking order.
Yeah, so you had to complete like the easy and medium tiers just to get to the hard tier. So there's like a lot of other content I had to do. But once you get to the hard tier, there's a bunch of stuff that I haven't done in the game. So if I want this elite void armor, I needed to complete quests I haven't done. I needed to get my skills up to levels that were like a lot higher than where I was at in them. I had to get certain items. And basically what it was asking me was to play the game focused for like a month in order to get to this point. So that's kind of like the open world quest burden that I was experiencing, is just like my goal was to get this set of armor. And in order to get to that point, I had to do a slew of tasks, and it literally took me a month.
That's crazy, man. And that's on top of working as a nurse, working on the podcast, being my best friend, and being a husband to that one girl. So like it really does like start to interfere with your normal life.
It really can interfere with your life if you let it. That's why Sierra calls it a life suck, because if
that
you
word makes me
don't
laugh.
if you don't really keep track of the time that you're putting into this and make sure that you're taking care of yourself, of your life, it's so easy to let everything else fall to the wayside when you're this addicted to a game. It's one of those things that you have to keep a balance. But I kind of just keep in mind, that's why I keep the mindset of like, there's never going to be an end to the content. And that's why it's so helpful to just have one task in mind, because you can just casually work on separate parts of the game and it will all be going towards a common goal.
Yeah, for sure. And that open world quest burden, it really goes across hundreds of games that really do come to mind right now. And if you guys are listeners of the show, you know my love of Skyrim is everlasting, and that's what comes to my mind when you talk about open world burden like that. You're in Whiterun, you're like, oh, I just got to go to Riften. You could fast travel, but who does that, right? But you start walking, and within a minute of being outside of a town, there is something for you to do. And it's, for me, it's usually a cave or just like a base or something. And then before you know it, you're on a side quest that you had no idea is going to take you a couple dozen hours to finish. And just like, before you know it, you forgot the reason you were going to the other town. And like just a small little sidebar here. In Skyrim, there's a random encounter where like a talking dog comes up to you out of nowhere and starts like talking to you, and you're like, are you a talking dog? What's going on? And before you know it, I'm not gonna like go into the whole details of the quest, but before you know it, you've spent the last 5 hours like talking to demons and a Daedric quest, and you get like demon armor, and like you're just like how you got from point A to point B
Right.
is like an episode of the regular show. Like it just doesn't make any sense how you got there. And again, since it's a random encounter, whatever you were doing in that moment is basically just null and void. And you just,
Right.
and there you go, the open world quest burden. It's just like there's so much things to do and so little time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too, is you have so much variety of how you can play things in RuneScape too. So it's like I did a lot of my skilling by myself, or I did a lot of like the questing by myself, but my brother plays this game a lot too. And so like he was teaching me how to play this mini game for a skill called rune crafting, where you just literally make the runes that allow you to perform magical spells, right?
Yes.
And it's notoriously a hated skill to train. And I had no idea that this was going to be a skill that got a mini game to play, like that you could just play this mini game and it would train the skill as you're playing. So he introduced me to this mini game, and it was actually pretty fun, all things considered. And we got to play it together. So we're just like on Discord chatting and playing this game together, and it made training the skill so much more fun. So there's so many different ways to play the game that there's a way for you to play. You just have to do like 5 seconds of research, and you can usually come up with something.
That's awesome, man. And I'm glad that you guys are playing together. I know you guys live so far apart, you and Mike.
Yeah.
So to have RuneScape there to bring you guys together, you gotta love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like another thing too about MMOs, is just like it's meant to be something that you play with other people. Obviously, a bunch of introverts are playing this game, so they're like mute, and they're just like not wanting to talk to anybody. But it's really cool if you can get your friends together and play, or even meet new people and play this game together, because it's just what Lobby Up is about. We're just trying to get together with people and play together and hang out.
Play some games, baby.
That's right.
Well, if you're still here and you love our content, give us a like and subscribe. It really would mean the world to us. At the end of each of our episodes, we try our best to leave our listeners on a positive note. Today, we want to thank you, the listener, for helping support our dreams of having a gaming podcast. What was once a dream is now a reality. This episode marks the end of our first season, and we are proud of the strides we've made. Season 2 promises to continue our current trend of loving games and talking about it with you. Our next season starts in early April, and we would love to have you back. Maybe you could bring some friends too. Don't fret though, we aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So until next time, thank you for lobbying up with us.
See you guys.